If you were a kid growing up in the 1990s, it was pretty hard to not be into dinosaurs. I don't know where it all started for me personally, but I can tell you that when it was really cemented was when Jurassic Park came out in 1993. I can still remember seeing that on VHS with my sister and being terrified during the scene when the two kids are getting hunted by those raptors in the kitchen. It was also kind of awesome seeing CGI dinosaurs for the first time. Feel sorry for the kids of today who are desensitized to this kind of thing, but back then this was just incredible. Outside of the film and its sequels, we also got some half-decent games as well, and I was lucky enough to own a couple of these, being the spoiled little prick that I was. Jurassic Park on the Genesis was this action platformer that was just insanely difficult, where you played as either Dr. Grant or a Velociraptor, and completed a bunch of levels that were kind of based off the film. Yeah, remember that scene where Grant's going through a power plant avoiding electrical wires? Or the one where he's going down rapids in a blow-up raft having to stop to refuel every 5 seconds? Yeah, me neither. Still though, avoiding a 16-bit T-Rex and being chased by raptors in the visitor center was pretty harrowing stuff for a young kid. Also on the Super Nintendo there was Jurassic Park 2, which was another action-y side-scroller that suffered from the same problem as the Alien 3 game, where it had fast enemies coming at you from the ends of the screen and knocking you on your ass when they hit you. It's a shame too because the animation in this one was really smooth, but it's kinda ruined by just some awful and irritating difficulty. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. What I'm here to talk about is Jurassic Park Trespasser for Microsoft Windows, released in 1998. Around that time in the industry when everyone couldn't hop off Half-Life's dick, which meant it ultimately got overlooked and those that did talk about it didn't really do so favourably. Despite all the negativity this thing got though, I still think it's a pretty decent game. What I think's cool about this one is that Steven Spielberg himself took part in its development. And it's also cool because it kind of ties in with the events in the film, with Richard Attenborough making a return to voice John Hammond. You're playing as a woman named Anne, voiced by Minnie Driver, who I don't think I've seen in anything else but Good Will Hunting and this. Anyway, Anne is on a trip to the tropics before her plane crashes and she lands on the island from the film, or the book if you want to get technical. She wakes up on the shores of the island and then has to make the perilous journey to find a radio and then hopefully get herself rescued, navigating the jungle whilst avoiding dinosaurs that want to gobble her up. Summing the whole thing up, it's a combination of a first-person shooter, a first-person puzzle game, and it even shows early mechanics of what we'd see in walking simulators, where you spend significant chunks of gameplay walking around as expository dialogue goes on in the background. In this case, it's Hammond's narration.
In 11 months, Site B became the most powerful genetics facility in the world.
Whatever.
I think for its time, visually, Trespasser is pretty impressive. I mean, the environments don't look as good as, Half-Life, but they are a lot bigger in size, which is pretty important to note, even if some of the textures looked warped and almost broken at times. Not to mention there's a lot of dinosaur species included and modelled pretty well too.
Brachiosaur, oldest of our recreations by 50 million years.
Obviously, carnivores serve as enemies like your T-Rex and raptors, which you'll be shooting in droves. Sometimes there's even scripted events where different species are going to start attacking one another, which is pretty cool to watch. But it's also not uncommon to see the odd Triceratops, Stegosaurus or Brachiosaurus just chilling out and doing their own thing, minding their own business, and I ain't got nothing against these guys. Honestly, if you're the type of person that would even think about shooting these gentle giants, then you're dead to me. Now, I guess one way you could describe Trespasser is that it's a survival game, and one of the most important things in a survival game is, of course, your health. So the way it works is that you look down and to the left, and your health is displayed by a heart tattoo on your character's chest, which is, unique. It's really important to check your health in this game. In fact, you should check your health at every single moment you can. Really, take the time to check your health properly as well. Take a good, long, hard look at your health and make sure it's as good as it can possibly be. There's no heads-up display either, and the only way you'll know how much ammo a weapon has is down to Annie remarking on the ammunition left when she picks a weapon up or fires a few shots.
About half a clip.
It's a pretty cool way of removing the user interface and also increasing the realism of the game world, forcing the player to really pay attention to what's going on.
About half.
Now, I did say before that this is a first-person shooter, and it still kind of is. You'll lose count of the amount of raptors you return to extinction, but it's not an FPS in the traditional sense. You're not going to be bunny hopping around and circle strafing to avoid incoming damage or any of that kind of shit. The movement controls are slow, clunky, and at times buggy and laborious. Anne can't really move up any kind of steep hill for some reason, and she has lots of trouble with stairs and ramps too. But it's the controls when shooting and using items that garnered a lot of attention back in the day, and even now it's something that people often refer to as being horrible and dated. Something I thought was pretty weird is the default control scheme, which even for its time is kinda odd. I mean, how's this? Q is jump, Z is crouch, and spacebar is fire. Now that seems off initially until you realise it actually works quite well, because you hold down the left mouse button to move the weapon within the screen, then spacebar to fire it, which sounds confusing, but like I said, it works surprisingly well. I don't really mind the controls that much. In a nutshell, the way it works is that you have to move and look around with the mouse and keyboard, but you have to use your right arm independently from the body. So if you see an item, you don't simply walk up to it and magically pick it up. You now have to hold out your arm by first pressing the left mouse button. Get close enough to pick it up, then you press the right mouse button to do so. At this point, the object's in your hand and you can do whatever the hell you want with it. If it's a gun, you can wave it around and take aim with the iron sights to fire at something. You can even turn the gun to the side to activate gangster mode. And there's something pretty funny about gunning down a raptor like this. It's not about a salary, it's all about reality.
About half a clip.
There's a couple of revolvers, a Desert Eagle, assault rifles, plenty of shotguns, and you can even use submachine guns like a silenced MP5 and a MAC-10. Don't know what a MAC-10 was doing on the island though, maybe they had some gangbangers crash there before Anne did. And each weapon has a different damage output and a certain amount of recoil to contend with. Some guns might not even outright kill dinosaurs, wounding them instead, where they'll hop around limping in pain before either running off or continuing their attack like total pricks. If it's a physics item like a crate or something else you need to interact with, you can move it around or pick it up and then drop it where it needs to go. Now look, it definitely is clunky and a bit shoddy at times, like there's instances where I kept dropping guns for reasons I couldn't figure out. But I think the crappiness of these controls has been a little bit overstated. It took me all of 60 seconds to get the hang of it, and from that point on, it's really not that bad. A lot of the puzzles in this game are always about grabbing a bunch of crates and jumping up to some kind of ledge that you can't reach. Literally, the last puzzle in the game requires you to stack crates to reach the escape chopper. Your character can't pull her own body weight up a chest-high wall, but you can wield a shotgun or an AK with one arm, and lift wooden boxes above her head like nobody's business. Speaking of carrying things, you can only carry 2 items at any one time, one in your right hand and the other you can keep offhand, swapping back and forth between the two by pressing E by default. And this is handy when you're completing puzzles where you need to bring items like keycards and so forth. One of the levels in particular has about 3 different keycards, all of which are hidden in somewhat out of the way places, which you have to juggle back and forth to access a bunch of locked areas. Good times. And then it means to increase immersion even more, you can look down and see the items strapped to your waist, next to Anne's glorious, health. Trespasser has 8 levels all up, and they're probably about 20 to 30 minutes long each. But if you really want to explore the entire island, it could easily be double that time. The last, I think, 3 or 4 levels is basically just all combat. You're just moving in a single direction, shooting at raptors with whatever guns you can get your hands on, as you try to escape the island, but some of the earlier levels are a bit more intricate. One of the levels is set in the abandoned town where Hammond used to live before shit hit the fan, and this place is just littered with empty buildings and raptors stalking the streets. And you could probably spend a couple of hours here alone, I reckon, just playing around with all the guns and exploring all the nooks and crannies. Most puzzles, like I said, are either physics-based, which are blatantly obvious, or a puzzle requiring some kind of keycard to access a locked area. You might also have to find the code to a keypad as well, which entering it is a lot tougher than it should be because of the controls. I think it's really cool too how whenever you're killed in this game, you can just sit there watching your lifeless body get eaten by raptors until you reload a save file. You can even hear them chomping, slurping, and swallowing as they eat you. It's pretty fucking metal. Though I couldn't get the T-Rex to eat me for some reason. Maybe he's allergic to thoughts. Or maybe he's just misunderstood. I mean, look at him. He looks like a pretty nice guy to me. I ain't got nothing against you either, Rex. I think the narration by Attenborough is neat as well and gives a bit more backstory and insight into the events from the books and films.
2 German technicians were accused of conspiring to walk out with crucial research materials.
But there are issues to be sure, and a lot of the stuff that people brought up back then still kind of ring true. The shooting can be really repetitive, for instance, because you're really only just shooting raptors over and over. There's, I think, one instance when you can potentially kill a T-Rex, but it requires a very specific weapon to do so. Later on, you do come up against stronger raptors, but they're by and large just still the same with more health points. What really shits me though is the inconsistency with the shooting. Now, I don't know if the game has location-based damage, which might explain it, but as far as I could tell, the headshots don't seem to do any more damage than body shots. The other issue is that the weapons just never seem to injure dinosaurs consistently. Like sometimes you'll kill a raptor with 2 shotgun blasts, but then other times you'll empty the entire weapon into them and it won't do jack shit. By far the most annoying thing though is when your weapon is knocked out of your hand, which almost always happens when something attacks you at close range, and it is incredibly frustrating. I don't know if it's been done for realism or something, but Anne has the grip strength of an elderly woman with hands covered in K-white jelly. She moves so slowly too that trying to get away from something at point blank range is just impossible. You're gonna die a lot to this and there's not much you can do about it. My solution to a lot of these issues, like the platforming, the controls and the physics going wrong, was just to keep multiple save files. I know it's not really an excuse for the bugs and the glitches, but it's the best possible way to deal with it. I think you can attribute most of these faults to the time the game came out though, and the over-ambition of the development team. Playing it now in 2018, I've gotta say, it's really not that bad. And as long as you're patient and can put up with a few shoddy mechanics here and there, it's still a lot of fun to play. Those few times I turned around and saw a raptor right on my ass still scared the crap out of me, as I fumbled to get my weapon up and fire back before I quickly got ripped apart. It still elicits the same response as it probably got back in 1998. The few times Minnie Driver gets to go loose with dialogue, she puts in a pretty good performance. It makes a big difference that they've actually got a proper actor to do these lines instead of just some random voice actor they plucked out of a talent agency.
We're dispatching helicopter to your current location.
Thank you. I mean, roger that. Over and out.
And you can't deny too that this game was just way ahead of the curve. I don't think the next time we saw physics like this in an FPS game was maybe until Half-Life 2, which came out like, 6 years later? And you gotta give it props for that. Plenty of games have since tried the minimalistic approach to a heads-up display as well, trying to keep things immersive and removing crucial visual elements like health, ammo, and map displays. And while I'm at it, I'll pull out the old female protagonist card too. Yeah, again, something else that hadn't really been done in FPS games at the time. In fact, I think it might be one of the first ones. I know Unreal came out a few months earlier, but you could change your character's gender in that, so I'm not sure if it counts. Now, I got my copy of the game off eBay, which set me back around $40. Pricey, I know. And to add insult to injury, I couldn't even get it working. What I ended up doing was downloading it from another site, which I've linked in the video description, which had the game fully patched and running in widescreen, and the entire thing worked without a single hitch. And this is probably the way I'd suggest going if you want to play it and check it out. Cleavage, big guns, and dinosaurs. What's not to love?
Almost out.